pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Cedar Grove Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be advertised by having the date, time, and place thereof posted on bulletin boards in the district, published and/or transmitted to the Verona, Cedar Grove Times, and Star Ledger newspapers, filed with the township clerk, and posted on the district's website. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting to the public for any comments for items on the agenda. Seeing none, I close the meeting to the public. At this point, I'd like to read the results of the November 3rd, 2015 school election as certified by the Essex County Clerk and the Township of Cedar Grove Clerk. Board members elected for a 3-year term are Mr. Frank Mandela, votes 1,238, and Mr. Peter Pravulich, votes 931. I'd like to administer the office to our new board members, well, returning board member and new board member. Okay, so if you'd like to come over to the front, I have a copy of the sheet that you will be reading from.
I think I've done this a few times. You know, but I do not know by heart.
I'll read first, and then you can, read your names into it, and do also, acknowledging that, here's one I'm going to put it away. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God.
I, Peter Pravulich, Frank Mandela, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God.
Okay, I, you fill in your name, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all of the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
I, Peter Pravulich, I, Frank Mandela, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of a member of the Board of Education, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations on your re-election and your new post.
It's a little cool now. This is new. Thank you, sir. Something was wondering about the election.
Okay, at this point, I would like to take nominations for the office of president. If someone would like to make a motion, please.
I'd like to elect Mr. Sakala.
I second that.
Are there any other nominations for president? I'm going to take the roll call vote on that, please. Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Sakala?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Pravulich?
Yes.
And Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
Okay. Congratulations on your reappointment as board president, Mr. Sakala.
Thank you.
And I'm turning over the meeting to you.
Thank you. Thank you, board members. And I look forward to this coming year.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we need to have the election for the office of board vice president. May I have a motion for board vice president, please?
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Dye.
May I have a second?
I second that.
May I have a roll call, please? Well, before I do that, let me just ask, are there any other nominations for the vice president? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Pervulich?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. Congratulations, Mrs. Dye.
Thank you.
We switch.
Okay. Take my pharmacy over here.
Make sure the name matches are right.
What'd you say?
Make sure the name tags are right.
Not unless I want to be you.
Oh, this one. This one. That one.
We're all official now.
That one. We good?
Okay, we have a rather long agenda for the reorganization meeting, so I guess we'll just get to it. When are we going to have our board presentations?
As soon as we go through first.
The reorganization?
There's an
items.
outbreak
After the
in
reorg-
statements.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with, may I have a motion for items B4 through B11? B4 is a motion to approve to the extent consistent with state law, policies, and bylaws that the board will be guided by Robert's Rules of Order. B5 is a motion to adopt and be governed in all actions to come before the board by written board policies, regulations, and job descriptions previously duly adopted and currently in use. B6 is a motion to approve the board meeting dates as set forth in that item. B7 is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the Code of Ethics material forwarded to the district by the New Jersey School Boards Association, and be it further resolved to adopt the Code of Ethics as per NJSA 18A 12-21 et sec. The board shall see that all members of the board receive training in understanding and adhering to this code, and shall discuss it annually at a regularly scheduled public meeting. Each member of the board shall sign documentation that he or she has received a copy of the code and has read and understood it. B8 is a motion to approve board committees, and what we'll be doing, we'll just be approving the committees, but we will not be naming board members. This meeting, we'll do that the next meeting after Mrs. Burke circulates the Google Docs that she has from last year. B9 is a motion to approve the Verona Cedar Grove Times and Star Ledger as official newspapers to advertise board notices. B10 is a motion to approve the curriculum and textbooks for the 2015-2016 school year that are currently in use. And B11 is a motion to approve the following reorganization appointments and designations as set forth in item B11. May I have a motion for those items, please?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
Mr. Pervulich?
Yes.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. May I have a motion for items B12 through B20? B12 is a motion to appoint Ms. Renee Tavernier as the district qualified purchasing agent according to the rules and regulations of PL 1999 as set forth in that item. And that item also says, be it further resolved that the Cedar Grove Board of Education increases the bid threshold to $40,000 for the qualified purchasing agent. B13 is a motion to reappoint Brown and Brown as benefit advisors as broker of record for health benefits for the period of January 6, 2016 through January 10th, 2017. B14 is a motion to appoint Bollinger Insurance as insurance carriers for school-time compulsory student accident coverage, with the Burton Agency as the broker of record. B15 is a motion to affirm the Cedar Grove School District's appointment of Deborah Janetto of Burton Agency as the risk management consultant for the time period January 6, 2016 through January 10, 2017. B16 is a motion to appoint the firm of Rogat McCarthy LLC as the board's bond counsel for the time period January 6, 2016 through January 10, 2017. B17 is a motion to appoint Robert Donahue, architect, as the Cedar Grove District's architect of record for the time period January 6, 2016 through January 10, 2017, at the hourly rate as set forth therein. B18 is a motion to reaffirm the Cedar Grove School District's appointment of the firm Scarillo, Cornell, Merlino, McKeever, and Osborne as the board attorney for the time period January 6, 2016 through January 10, 2017, at the hourly rate as set forth therein. B19 is a motion to approve Phoenix Advisors LLC to provide services as the district's financial advisor / continuing disclosure compliance advisor for a fee not to exceed $850 for the appointment time January 1st, 2016 through January 10th, 2017. And B20 is a motion to appoint the service providers as set forth in that item for the remainder of the 2015-2016 school year. May I have a motion for those items, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Yes.
Mr. Pavulich?
Yes.
Mr. Sakala?
Yes. May I have a motion for items B21 through B28? B21 is a motion to approve the depositories of school funds as set forth in that item. B22 is a motion to require that all checks, drafts, or other orders for payment or withdrawal of money from said account be assigned to the person holding the appropriate title, and those titles and accounts are set forth in B22. B23 is a motion to approve the establishment of a petty cash fund and to appoint the custodian of those funds pursuant to the administrative code and New Jersey statutes, and those custodians and those funds are set forth in B23. B24 is a motion to adopt the Uniform Minimum Chart of Accounts distributed by the state and utilized by the district to authorize the addition of sub-account designations as the business administrator may deem necessary, and to authorize the superintendent of schools to make any necessary transfers below the level of the New Jersey Department of Education Chart of Accounts. B25 is a motion to appoint the business administrator / board secretary as the custodian of government records for the period of January 5th, 2016 through January 10th, 2017, as required by the New Jersey Administrative Code. B26 is a motion to authorize the business administrator / board secretary to solicit bids when required. B27 is a motion to authorize the business administrator / board secretary to participate in the New Jersey state contract process, and be it further resolved to authorize the business administrator / board secretary to utilize state contracts for purchases when feasible. And B28 is a motion to approve continued participation at various state and national cooperative contracts as a method of procurement in accordance with the public law referenced in the local finance notice 2012-10 dated May 14, 2012, at no cost to the Cedar Grove District, and those cooperative contracts are included in B28 and listed therein. May I have a motion for those items, please?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
Mr. Pavulich?
Yes.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. Okay, and we'll finish out the reorganization issues with looking for a motion for items B29 through B32. B29 is a motion to approve the adoption of the existing contracts and agreements to which the Cedar Grove Board of Education is a party. B30 is a motion to reaffirm the Cedar Grove School District's participation in the Educational Data Service Incorporated Cooperative Pricing System for the purchasing of supplies for the remainder of the school year. B31 is a motion to authorize the business administrator / board secretary to release warrants for payment of the district's bills as needed in between scheduled board meetings and have those claims ratified at the next regular board meeting. And B32 is a motion to approve that the Cedar Grove Board of Education, in compliance with the administrative code, acknowledges the following language on student records in policy 8330, and I'll read that. Mandated public records are those records school districts have been directed to compile by state statute, regulations, or authorize administrative directive in accordance with New Jersey Administrative Code 6A:32-7.3. Permitted pupil records are records authorized by the board to be collected in order to promote the education welfare of the pupil. The board shall authorize the permitted records to be collected by adopting at a regular public board meeting a resolution listing such permitted records or Regulation 8330, which will list such permitted records. May I have a motion for those items, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Provolic?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. Okay, so we got through the reorg stuff. We're going to move on to our committee reports, and I guess we can say hello, and good evening, and welcome back, and Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year,
Hello.
Mr. Sakala.
And we have a new board member. Welcome, Mr. Pravulovich. Did I say
Thank
that
you.
correct?
Perfect.
You're killing everybody with that last name, you know.
I don't even
Poor
try.
Renee, poor Renee, every
Renee's the
time.
one's gonna have to practice it the most.
Oh, my God.
Do we have any committee reports this evening?
Don't look at me. Yeah. Yes, I was supposed to go to the middle school FSA meeting last night, but instead I went to the high school wrestling match at Morris Knowles, or whatever high school it was, very far away. That was exciting. They lost, but it was a great match. So I apologized to Ms. Adubato, and she said it was fine. The meeting would be faster anyway. And so that was that, so.
One highlight from that meeting, which I wasn't in attendance either, but I do know, and this is for the public out there, the FSA at the middle school is really in need of volunteers for trips. They have fewer volunteers this year than they have had in any years prior. So for any of the board members who may want to be involved, or anybody in the public looking to volunteer, it's a great program. It's been very successful over the last several years that we've had it, but it's not going to be as successful without parent volunteers to help out.
Are you talking about just on the 21st or throughout?
I think it's throughout. I think
Okay.
it's just generally to help through the whole process up into and including on the day of the event.
Okay.
Okay.
And they announced their raffle winners last night. I know there's somebody in the audience who actually won for the month of January.
Excellent.
So, congratulations.
Congrats. Any other committee reports? Mr. Pravulovich, how many committee reports do you have for us this evening?
Not this evening.
We have a contest going, so.
Great. Count me in.
Okay, so having no further committee reports, we can move on to our board presentation, and we're going to take them in this order?
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Lurch, welcome. Thank you. It is good to have you back. We'll just ask that you step up to the microphone, if that's okay. It's
It's over there.
over there. Yeah. And just so the public is aware, Mr. Lurch is from our CPA firm that we hire to audit the board, and he's here to discuss the June 30th, 2015 audit. So welcome.
Great, thanks. Thanks for having me. So I'm here to discuss the audit, which ended June 30, 2015. Couple new things. The main new thing is dealing with the new GASB 68, which is a governmental auditing standard, board standard, basically, which now requires that all Board of Educations, not only in the state of New Jersey, but nationally, report the pension liabilities. And I'll get into that a little bit later. That's really the biggest change to the report. Some interesting numbers there. I'll start out by saying that the district received an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion. It's the one we're all striving for. It used to be called unqualified. It's called unmodified. Same thing. So clean opinion, very good. And what I'll do is I'll go through the financials with the board, talk a little bit about surplus, and then we could talk about the comments. So we have one basically in athletics and student activities. Those are the comments we have.
Still.
Yeah, but it's, when you look at the cape or the list of comments you can possibly have, when we talk about student activities and athletics, They certainly are the most common in most Board of Educations. Very difficult to alleviate all of those comments or recommendations. You know, sometimes it means bringing all of that stuff in-house, and that becomes additional costs involved, and so it's not easily rectified. Nothing major here. I think it's, again, housekeeping kind of items. We can go through it, and I'm sure that Renee will go and deal with the individuals that need to be dealt with when dealing with these exceptions. Common exceptions we're seeing in a lot of schools. So let me start out by going through some of the financial statement information. Everybody should have received two reports. The larger of the two reports is the financial statements themselves. And really, this is a report that is going to have your auditor's opinion, which is, again, a clean opinion. It'll have your MD&A, management discussion and analysis. It'll have the footnotes. It'll have statistical information, which gives demographic information over a 10-year period. And it has a single audit component. You are subject to a single audit. You're subject to a state single audit, not a federal. The criteria is $500,000 or more in expenditures in either one of those two categories. We were just under on the federal side, and we were over on the state side. So we had a state single audit requirement as well. And we had no findings in those state single audit requirements. So what I'll do is I'll take you to the fund equity section, because I think it's the most important section of the report, and that's of the larger of the two reports, and that is page 70. So page 70 is really a culmination of your activity for the current year in the general fund. It'll have your current year revenues and expenditures. It'll have the variance between the budgeted amounts. But if you were to look at the page 70 under the actual column at the very bottom, you can see that we actually had a decrease in total equity of $88,459, which we ended the year, this current year, with $4,506,789. And what does it really comprise of? The various components here. One thing to note is that Board of Educations are limited to the amount that you can retain in your unrestricted or unassigned fund balance, that final number there, that $596,250. You're limited to 2% of your expenditures, and there are some minor adjustments, but it's very close to your 2% number. So of the $4,506,000, the amount that you're able to retain as free equity or unrestricted, unassigned equity is $596,000. And then after that, we'll go through the various components of the assignments and then finally the restrictions. So we have two assigned items here of fund balance, designated for subsequent years' expenditures of $450,627. It just means when the Board of Education developed their budget for 15-16, that's part of the component that you put in there as the utilization of surplus, equity on hand, to balance the budget. The other assigned item is year-end encumbrances of $100,444, and that represents encumbrances. So goods and services that were ordered, not yet performed. A prime example would be me. We were contracted with the Board of Education, but of course, before June 30th, we were unable to perform the auditing function. We had to wait to the year end to close out. So the contract was established, the monies were reserved and set aside, but of course, we couldn't perform any of the services until after the year end. So that's a type of item that you'll have in an encumbrance. Then we get into the restricted areas. And we have a couple components in the restricted. The first one is capital reserve. Capital reserve is money that's set aside, obviously, for capital needs of the facility, of the district. There were some transactional activities here. We started out with $1,832,000. We ended with a combination of $1,705,000. We had put in $281,000 through the budget and year-end appropriations, and we took out through the budget process $408,000 to be utilized for facility improvements. And you can see it's split here. So I have capital reserve designated for subsequent years. Simply means the $260,000 is currently being utilized in your 15-16 year budget. And the remaining component of $1,445,000, which is undesignated, that simply means it's set aside for future needs of the district. And that is limited to your long-range facility plan local improvements, but you're not anywhere near that component or that limitation. The next item is maintenance reserve. And that maintenance reserve is new this year. The district added $100,000. The maintenance reserve, of course, is being utilized or can be utilized for the maintenance of the facilities. It's easily utilized through the budget process. There you do have a limitation of 4% of your maintenance requirements. We are nowhere near that number. Two common items that most districts are having or are setting aside in reserves are the capital, that's been around forever, and the maintenance. One of the other items that's still available is an emergency reserve. Very difficult to get the money out. Easy to put it in through a board resolution, but in order to get the money out, and there's specific language in the statute which basically says, though, even if you mismanage, and I don't really understand what that means, how they can determine if there was mismanagement in a budget process, but the statute clearly says mismanagement is not a reason to be able to withdraw out of the emergency reserve. And there is a specific area that you can take it out, and that's for health benefits that exceed a 4% limitation. But the only way you can get at it is that you have to utilize all your cap banks. So once you exhaust all your cap banks, if your back is against the wall, and then you can actually access this emergency reserve. So I don't really recommend putting money into that emergency reserve, and I think we should stick with the capital and stick with the maintenance. And the next two items are the excess surplus numbers. So after you go through this calculation of coming up the maximum and then putting into the various buckets of the reserves here, we're left with the excess balance. So when I was here last year and presented, we had an excess balance of $794,329. That was the amount from the previous year. That's the amount that's being utilized currently in 15-16 to balance the budget. So the combination of the 794 and the 450,000 is the total amount of surplus that you're utilizing to balance the 15-16 budget, roughly 1.2 million. So after all of those, again, after all of those particular calculations, we get into the current year surplus, and that current year surplus is 759,664. That amount will be utilized in 16-17 when the budget's developed as surplus. Okay. So financially, you're very sound. You're in good shape. If anybody has any questions on that, otherwise I'll take you right to the two comments we have here. And then I do want to talk a little bit about GASB 68.
Just one quick
Sure.
question. So you were saying that emergency fund that you don't encourage is you have to use your capital, all your capital reserve funds. So all of those have to be depleted before you'd ever be able to, in the maintenance reserve, before you.
No. You'd have to use your cap banks.
What does that mean?
Your
That was
cap
what-
banks are monies that are you get limitations as to the amount that you can utilize in raising your taxes. If you stay
okay.
below that amount,
Right.
you're able to bank some of it.
Right.
So if you're in a situation where you have no cap banks because we're raising money at a higher rate than we wanted to, that's when you can utilize the
Gotcha.
emergency.
Okay, so not these
No,
accounts,
not at all.
it's-
Not at
okay,
all.
Thank you.
No. All right, so I'm going to go into the smaller of the two reports. And again, the smaller of the two reports is dictated by the state of New Jersey. Its format is dictated. It'll identify all the areas of audit requirements, and then what we'll do is we'll identify and report to the board and the state any of the deficiencies in those particular areas. So after doing that, we have some comments, and really on page 5, and they deal with student activity and athletic association. And the first one deals with the high school athletic account. We do testing, we do revenue and expenditure testing in both student activities and athletics. And when we were looking at the disbursement cycle, we did note that we had 3 coaches' signatures which were lacking on the approvals, and 2 of the athletic directors. So each disbursement rather, requires both signatures. You know, we pull a sample out, and we had, like I said, 2 that had lacking the directors and 3 that were lacking the coach's signature. And it's part of a control system to make sure that we have both individuals requesting and signing for any kind of disbursement. And most of those disbursements are really going to be referees, for the most part. So then on page 6, dealing with the high school cash disbursement cycle here, again, we had no issues on the revenue or collection cycle. As part of the testing, we found that we had 1 request form that lacked a vendor invoice. Okay. We had 2 purchases that were made by an individual utilizing personal credit card, and the shipment of these items were made to their home. This is something that we're seeing more often than not now. that a lot of items are being purchased through credit cards, and really we want to discourage that, and that everything should be purchased either through purchase order. Some of the stuff now is being purchased online, and clearly if that's happening and if it's an exception, and we talked about this a little bit about how to circumvent that, we need to make sure that there are control procedures in place to ensure that that these items are for school purposes and that we are supplied with the vendor invoices. So this is something that is kind of new now. I am seeing it out there. We certainly do not want to see it if possible. The next item was dealing with some of these items that we checked to make sure that they are purchased for student activity purposes, because it's a student activity account. And we had some items in here that were purchased, God bless you. Some items that were purchased that were non-student related, some Christmas gifts, Christmas luncheon, business cards, those type of items. And then we had one online purchase that was lacking a vendor invoice. So I think at the end of the day, we'd like to see that some of this purchasing in the student activities, especially with the high school, the internal controls be enhanced to provide some kind of assurance that these are not going to be repeated. Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Sure.
A question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you were saying that these were items that were purchased, are they allowable purchases?
Well, I think what happened is that we realized that part of the funding was really not student activity related.
So what happens there?
Yeah, well, we talked about it with the superintendent and with Renee as well. There were certain reimbursements that came back that were part of, I believe, yearbooks. Okay, and so the yearbook company would basically provide an invoice, and apparently the final tally of the yearbook cost was less than the invoice originally determined. And so the fundraising was the payments were made for an amount, the invoice came in less. And then that amount that was less actually went back into the principal's account at the student activity at the high school, and it was put into this principal's account. And at the end of the day, we realized that that's really not a student activity account. It shouldn't be commingled. So what I had suggested at that point is that if there are going to be some credits for any of these yearbook disbursements, a couple things should either happen. Either the vendor should just charge the exact amount for the yearbook, and let's not deal with any kind of credits. If there are credits, one of the other options is to leave it into the account. You leave it in the student activity account and apply it against next year's yearbooks, or take the excess money that's coming back and bring it back into the general fund and put it as a miscellaneous revenue.
Right.
So I think this is something that we brought to the attention. I know it's been going on, but now it kind of came to light this year. We talked about it. I think we just need to make sure that the principals understand that those funds are really not student activity funds. They're really board funds or, again, some of those options. And that, if they're going to purchase stuff that is non-student related, it should be purchased directly out of the budget line and not out of these funds. And that's really the key component.
So what happened to those funds? Did they come back to our general budget?
Well, this is last year. So we need to find out what happened in the current year. I know that last year that the monies went back into this athletic account, which was identified as a principal's account. Now, I don't know what's happening now going forward, because that's probably done at the very end of the school year, right? The yearbooks are done at the very end of the school year. So it's something, obviously, that needs to be looked into. We need to make sure that Renee and certainly Superintendent go through the process to make sure that they understand that those funds are not principal funds.
If I may, let me just shed a little bit of light. I mean, we have nothing to hide here. This account has been in existence. I took full advantage of it when I was the principal for 4 years. What are the monies being used for? Well, some very nice things. We do staff luncheons. We buy.
Mr. Featherman, can I just,
Yeah.
so what happens is there was extra money from raising money for the yearbook, and then that excess, we paid for the yearbooks, the excess
Right.
went to this fund that you're talking about.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
And that fund was used to purchase some assessment materials. It was used to purchase teacher appreciation materials, staff luncheons during professional development workshops. Some of the money was used to paint the lockers over the years. So the funds weren't being used in, I'm not sure what the word is, in a bad way. You know, they were being used, they were being returned back into the high school for beautification, for programming. For us to have an extra $1,000 lying around to buy trinkets for teacher appreciation, as I said, was a nice thing, we thought. But as this came to light, the way the monies were coming back and being set aside, what we thought was great. Wow, we can take advantage of this to do different things for kids, for the Student of the Month luncheon, for instance. No. So it's been exposed, so to speak, and we've addressed it, and so
Right, it's
That
not,
account's
it's not
been eliminated.
material in dollars at all. The point from our perspective is when we were auditing student activity expenditures, they have to be student activity related. And when we started going through this and we saw non-related student activity expenditures, well, that's when we said, well, what's going on? And then, of course, we realized that this was part of this yearbook thing. So I think we know the solution, we know the answer. It wasn't stuff that wasn't that you weren't able to charge through the budget process. So if you would have went through the budget process, it clearly would have been allowable charges. It's just what was the source of funds. So really, at the end of the day, like I said, the simplest way is to just have the vendor charge you the exact amount. If that's not, I don't know why they can't do that, but if they can't, then they either apply it to next year's or put it back into the general fund, and then the principals will, as they go through this process of procurement for these other items, they'll simply do it through the budget line item. And it'll all go through the bill list, and it'll all go past the Board of Education.
But if they're being used for what Mr. Featherman said, isn't that part of student?
Not student activity related. Basically, student activity related would be anything that's coming in for that purpose of the students.
So like
So
Student of the Month is
fundraising.
not a student activity?
And student of the month in what sense?
Like they,
might have actually qualified purchasing the lunch for Student of the Month. That might have been an item that would be
oh, great.
okay.
Okay.
But, teacher appreciation, money's deferred to paint the lockers.
Business
trying to-
cards we had.
business
We had some
yeah.
Christmas gifts. So these are items that certainly aren't. So really, just in a general sense, it's really student fundraising for whatever purpose, a ski trip, whatever it happens to be, a play or a trip somewhere, those monies are then dedicated for that purpose.
Now, does the money have to be used in that school year?
No,
Oh, that's good.
no. But just has to be utilized for student activity purposes.
Right.
Cannot be commingled with the general fund revenues. And I think that's kind of what was invertedly happened, going through the process. Okay.
Thanks. Yep.
So when we brought it to light, and hopefully now, going through the process, they'll be educated, and that's the key thing. Once you educate them at that point, then hopefully, we'll eliminate this principal's so-called account, or sub-account, rather. Right?
It's only at the high school. It's the only location,
Where there's a sub-account?
right? The principal sub-account.
So that's the only comment I have, okay, comments. Just a little bit about GASB 68, and if anybody has the book in front of them, just going to go through some of the supplemental information that's in the audit report, and the larger of the two reports. Really starts on page 73. But just as an overview, GASB 68. 68.
Oh, 68?
I'm sorry, 73. I'm sorry. I keep saying 68. So as I indicated, GASB 68 was a new pronouncement. It's a national standard, and it really was provided or required as part of a transparency program so that the public and the readers would get a better understanding or a better feel for what the pension liabilities are for state and local governments. And this is new for 2015. And so now what we're doing here is we're booking financial liabilities on your district-wide financial statements. And what's interesting is that the state of New Jersey had to procure with KPMG, and they went and did the actuarial calculations for the entire state. And we're part of a cost-sharing system. So we're a proportionate share of the statewide system. And the numbers are certainly staggering once I go through all of them with you. But when you look at the first component, and this component really deals only with public employee retirement system. So this piece only deals with a very small fraction of your total employees. If you think about it, the PERS system is really office staff for the most part and custodial. And what that liability is that we booked on your financial statements was $6,796,000. That's the number that the actuarials individuals came through and assigned to the Cedar Grove Board of Education is what your liability. So it's really for all these employees that have retired, current employees, based upon their life expectancies and investment rates and so forth, what the total liability is that you would have to pay for the remainder of those individuals. So it's almost $6.8 million. So that's new, and that's recorded on the financial statements up front on a district-wide. But if we were to flip over to page 75, now the TPAF, the Teacher's Pension Annuity, that fund, where most of your employees are, you are not required by statute to fund that liability. So the PRS public employees, you are required. We put it in your budget every single year. You make a payment. And we know that total liabilities, as I said before, was at 5.6 million, whatever that number was. And then you get into the TPAF, which is the teachers. The state of New Jersey, by statute, is required to make those payments for those pension individuals. But your proportionate share of those individuals is a staggering $55,282,000. So that's all the teachers that have gone through the system. That's the state's liability based upon the actuarial calculations of what the state's going to be liable for. Now it gets a little bit crazier when I throw this number out at you. So that's just Cedar Grove's small, minute percentage of the whole state system. Okay. The state's required, as I said, to make the payments on behalf of the teachers for that pension system. Okay. What they do is that they make a payment, okay, and then they require each Board of Education. So we were required to book a revenue and an expense in our financial statements called TPAF reimbursement on behalf. Okay, we do that. We were required to make, based upon the actuarial calculations, to fund it fully on an annual basis, the TPAF system. They were required to make an on-behalf payment of $2,975,000. And they only made a payment of $556,000. So they were actually short in this one particular year for this one particular school, $2,419,000 in this one instance on a funding mechanism. So it's kind of a little bit of an eye-opener when you look at the total numbers. Now, what's coming in 2 years? In 2 years, we're going to have the requirement to report on the financial statements the medical side of it. So we can just imagine what those numbers are going to be like when we report those. So that's coming in 2017. Trying to get to a full disclosure so this way a financial statement reader can really get a full picture as to what the total liability is. But right now, that's not going to be, again, that's another on behalf. So that'll be another disclosure item. So it won't really affect your financial statements per se. So that's kind of new, and that's kind of interesting. We don't really know what that means, but but I think, just one point, though, from a budgeting perspective, really nothing's going to change. Even though you have this roughly $6 million total PERS liability, you're going to continue to pay as you've always done based upon the bill, because we are basically on a budgetary basis of accounting. So that's not going to change. All right, any questions? Thanks for having us.
No,
we,
thanks.
We appreciate it.
Good to see you
Okay.
again.
Much.
You need anything, call.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Take
Lewis.
care. Good night.
Good night. Okay, we have one further presentation this evening. We have Mr. Kinney here to talk to us regarding the district anti-bullying report for the 2014-2015 school year. Welcome, Mr. Kinney. Happy New Year.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. In 2011, the governor enacted and signed into law the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act. In essence, what that did as I've talked in the past, has put protocols into place as far as what the district responsibilities are when it comes to protecting our students from harassment, intimidation, and bullying. One of which is to report to the Board of Education on an annual basis our self-assessment grades for the district and for each school. After we report them, we have to post them on the district front page website and the website of each of the schools. So that's what will be done after this report tonight. So let's start out. Remember, this is the 14-15 school year. Our self-assessment was done at the end of last year. And I'll talk about how those particular grades, per se, are determined. So we start off that each school has a school safety team. It's composed of teachers, administrators, a parent representative, and what's called the anti-bullying specialist, which in our case, in each of those schools, is a guidance counselor. They're required to complete a self-assessment. It has 26 criteria-based questions on it. Each question is broken down into several different parts. For example, it might ask you whether or not you have had a school safety team meeting at least a minimum of 2 times per year. So you have to answer that yes or no. If you've gone above and met 3 times, you can say you've exceeded that amount as well. There's, again, those 26 questions is not just a simple yes or no. You have to give yourself a rating, a 0, 1, 2, or 3. 0 meaning we've not met the requirement, 1 that we've partially met, 2 we've met, and 3 we've exceeded those. Over the past several years now, we've done this for 3 years, we've been pretty harsh on ourselves because we really want to be realistic. We could sit here as a group in each school and give ourselves perfect scores. What that does is pretty much nothing for us because we're not really self-reflecting as far as what this assessment, the goal of the assessment is really supposed to be about. The scores from this assessment, as we hand them electronically in through a state website, are submitted to the state, and the state comes back and compares them to the report that I have to biannually submit to the state, which is called the HIB ITP report. And basically, I tell the state, we've had this many cases, this is how we've reported them, this is the type of trainings we've done. So I'm, in essence, as the anti-bullying coordinator, backing up or showing proof of what's being reported on the self-assessment. The state then compares the two, and they come back, as we were just given in December, now we're here reporting the scores to you, and they say to you, yes, these are the scores, these are accurate, or we've changed those scores based on what, what we see and what we're seeing on both reports, and here are your actual grades. We haven't had any changes this year to our scores, so we were right on target as far as our self-assessment is concerned. So the comparison of grades, what I've done here is in each school, giving you a breakdown visually of the 13-14, remember 2 years ago, and then last year's grades, which we just got this December. As you could see, as you go through, there have been several improvements in the high school in certain areas as far as programs and approaches, staff instruction, transition programming, and again, down at the bottom, you see the improvement that was made. Again, out of 78 points, 26 questions, a maximum of 3 points on each question gives you 78 total, and therefore we've then increased the score at the high school for their grade for the 2014-15 school year. In the middle school, they do some nice work there with the different types of programs, which I'll get to at the end of the slides. They've gone and improved their scores as far as approaches and initiatives, staff instruction as well, and they come out with a final score of a 76 out of 78, improving from a 67 the year before. In North End and South End, very similar schools, you'll see that the programs and initiatives are both extremely similar to the point where over the past 2 years, as I flip back and forth between the two screens, they pretty much have on target the same exact numbers as we run through, except for two of the areas which flip-flop for North End and South End, but they come out with the same score of a 61 out of 78. Again, improving from a 59, gaining 2 points on the year. A couple of things to note. We still continue to make improvements in our initiatives throughout the year. As you may be aware, on the front page of the website, there's a respect video for the middle school. They do it every year. They do their parent universities. We've had multiple programs already come into the schools. Omega Man was here in the elementary schools, breaking up bullying, bending, barbed wire, and doing all sorts of things for our elementary school kids to get the point across about stopping bullying and respecting others. We've had a nice presentation at the high school by Dr. Bellacci, although it did touch base on how high school students should deflect peer pressure and stress and all that. It did touch base on being a good person and basically drowning out the negative that's around you and not being somebody that can be influenced doing negative things as well. So that touched a little bit on bullying as well. At the middle school, again, with the respect video, Omega Man, we're doing really great things as far as whole school awareness projects. The middle school also does Panther Praise, and the high school has their peer leaders now working with our younger students in the 9th grade. Our school safety team meetings continue to do workshops for professional development on school climate. Well, our HIB page is now up and running, so parents can utilize that as well as teachers. There's many different resources on that particular page that gives particular trainings and more PowerPoints that we continuously do, and this one obviously will be up there as well. Parent University will take place at North End and South End regarding what we do in schools on bullying. That'll be done in the spring. And the health curriculum unit is in place now, going through the high school health classes on bullying and character education. And in the middle school, we do a nice job with Character Ed and Ms. Caravella during that cycle class that I think really stresses building positive character in our middle school students. One thing to note, that a lot of what you hear and what you see is middle school focused, because that is a very vulnerable age group where you could really reach, and they understand a lot. At the elementary schools, they try to push in the classrooms, as Mr. Skoranek does, but more and more in the middle school, they try to really hammer it down how to be, a good person, and not to be that that type of character that would do something like harassment, intimidation, or bullying, and be proactive about being not a bystander in essence, but being somebody who's going to stand up for somebody else who might be being bullied as well. So, and then the high school, again, they just really ramp it up, and they focus on in many different cases as well, just good character education. So I think they do a nice job all across the board. As you can see, the scores are improving. We really do, I press upon them, when you do these self-assessments, be realistic on yourselves. Don't inflate the scores. There's no need to. We're proud of what we do, and our scores reflect it. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Kinney.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming out on this
No problem.
warm night that we're experiencing. Thank you for your report. Okay. Let's continue to move on the agenda under minutes. May I have a motion for B33 through B35? B33 is a motion to approve the public and executive minutes of December 8th, 2015. B34, excuse me, is a motion to approve the budgetary transfers for the month of December 2015. And B35 is a motion to approve the board secretary certification to the Cedar Grove Board of Education pursuant to the Administrative Code that no line item account has encumbrances and expenditures which in total exceed the line item appropriation in violation of the code. May I have a motion for those items, please?
So be moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
Mr. Pavulovich?
I abstain from B33. Aye for everything else.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. Under business, may I have a motion for items B36 through B47? B36 is a motion to approve the interfund transfer in the amount of $450,000 from the Cedar Grove Board of Education Capital Reserve account to the Cedar Grove Board of Education Capital Projects account. This transfer is for payments of purchase order obligations that are payable prior to the receipt of short-term note financing that is expected to be received March 2016.
Should we get that money back?
B37 is a motion to retroactively approve Melick Tully and Associates to perform environmental consulting services related to the turf field construction project. Services include preparation and draft specification for the preparation of the health safety plan and review and comment on the awarded contractor's HASP. B38 is a motion to accept the Cedar Grove Board of Education Comprehensive Annual Financial Report as of June 30th, 2015, with recommendations that we heard from Mr. Lurch a few minutes ago. B39 is a motion to approve the corrective action plan for the June 30th, 2015 audit as set forth therein. B40 is a motion to accept the Cedar Grove Municipal Alliance's generous donation in the amount of $400 to be designated toward the Cedar Grove High School All-School Council Fall Foreman. B41 is a motion to approve the reimbursement of $3,400 for security hardware purchased from Access Control System installed at St. Catherine's of Siena School. This funding is for reimbursement from the NJDOE non-public security aid funds awarded in July 2015. B42 is a motion to approve the purchase of one front door buzzer system installed at St. Catherine's of Siena School. New Jersey Department of Education non-public security aid in the amount of $1,975 will be used to offset the cost of this purchase. Any additional monies needed to cover the cost will be absorbed by St. Catherine's of Siena School. B43 is a motion to approve the subscription bus contract with the parents of the student listed therein for the remainder of the 2015-2016 school year. B44 is a motion to approve the subscription bus contract for the student with the ID number listed therein for the 2015-2016 school year. B45 is a motion to approve the Cedar Grove High School to hold its annual graduation ceremony at Montclair State University on June 17, 2016. The cost for the rental of the facility is set forth in that item. B46 is a motion to accept the $10,000 Investors Foundation Grant Award from Investors Bank. $7,000 will be used for the Memorial Middle School courtyard renovation project. $3,000 will be used for the purchase of lunch tables at North End and South End schools. And B47 is a motion to approve the Cedar Grove Summer Music Academy for use of facility request for the 2016 Music Enrichment Program held at the Memorial Middle School, running from June 20th, 2016 through July 14th, 2016, from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. May I have a motion for those items, please?
So
Oh, yeah.
moved.
Second,
Any discussion?
I just have a couple of questions. On the, on B36, that is just where we are fronting the money for the
Yes.
referendum, and then we get that back with the referendum money,
Yes.
correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then my next question is on B39, there's only one recommendation on the corrective action plan, but Mr. Lurch talked about two areas where we were lacking.
Well, this is, it covers both of them. The corrective action plan that I'm sending in will, if you want, I'll put in more description regarding the expenditure, but this is that he's got to review the checks and the co-curricular events, verify the support documents and et cetera. I consolidated what he said.
No, not that one.
The principal.
The principal
Principal
account,
fund.
isn't that an action plan?
Well, the athletic director he's in charge of the student activities and the athletic account. That falls under our athletic director. And the principal account is one of the accounts that's part of the student co-curricular accounts. It's a
Oh.
sub-account in there,
Oh, it falls under athletics?
yes.
Oh.
That's part of his job responsibility.
Oh, gotcha.
So the account that has the yearbook money falls under the athletic director?
Yes, because it's co-curricular, and that's his responsibility.
Gotcha.
All right.
That was my questions.
If you could explain, just for the public, the St. Catherine of Siena School purchases, just.
Sure.
I know it's really kind of funneled through us.
It is funneled through us.
Right.
The State Department of New Jersey, from state funding, will give the public school district that the private school is located in, money that the private school is entitled to, and we receive the money, and then we in turn forward the money to the private school after they provide proper documentation that the money has been expended for the purpose in which the state designated that it be spent on. The money that's here, the security aid, the St. Catherine's also receives textbook aid, which, we note in our budget line. They, aside from textbook aid, nurse aid, transportation aid.
Right, I
So,
remember-
there were
yeah.
several accounts, and this just happens to be, since we're approving these purchase orders, and this was approved in July, that we're noting this, especially in B42, that buzzer for the front door is more than what the remaining funds were allocated, and we just want to make sure that St. Catherine's, will be covering those costs themselves.
And then just for the public's sake, B45, the reason that the graduation will be at Montclair State University is because the field will be under construction. And while we talked about going to Panther Park, there was no alternative for a rain issue if it was raining. The auditorium is also going to be under construction, so that was why another location was selected. And I was just curious, B46, who applied for that grant? That's awesome.
That's, the bank had reached out to us, so, obviously, in speaking to Mr. DeCourt and, Mrs. DiMatteo and Ms. Dyer, that we were able to get the grant application together quickly. We had put in for $15,000, but even to be awarded the $10,000
That's awesome.
was
That's
awesome.
great.
you know.
Thank you.
And this is something that investors, their grant foundation does every year, so now that we're in the loop, we will definitely be doing a more thorough
Yes.
application next year.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Any further questions or comment?
Nope.
May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
Mr. Pavulovich?
Yes.
Mr. Sakala?
Yes. From the Office of the Superintendent of Schools, under Personnel, may I have a motion for S1 through S13? S1 is a motion to rescind the JV baseball coaching stipend for Michael Rizzamini and approve the JV coaching stipend for Michael Rizzamini at those amounts set forth in that item. S2 is a motion to approve Edward Pochowski, freshman boys baseball coach, step 1, at the stipend set forth therein for the 2015-2016 school year. S3 is a motion to approve Lindsay Brain, South End third grade teacher, and that's at the salary set forth therein, effective January 6th, 2016 through June 30th, 2016. S4 is a motion to accept the letter of retirement of Veronica Kaplanovich, North End School Physical Education teacher, effective July 1st, 2016. S5 is a motion to approve Rebecca Fody to provide intervention services at the rate set forth therein, funded through NCLB Title I grant monies for the 2015-2016 school year. S6 is a motion to approve Sandra Page to provide professional development services on Monday and Tuesday, January 18th and 19th, in the amount set forth therein, funded by NCLB Title I grant. S7 is a motion to rescind Kevin Skoranek as South End School morning care duty for the 2015-2016 school year. S8 is a motion to approve the employees set forth therein for South End morning care duty for the remainder of the 2015-2016 school year. S9 is a motion to accept the resignation of Karen Del Sandro, MMS paraprofessional, effective on or before January 15, 2016. S10 is a motion to reimburse the school-based volunteer as set forth therein. S11 is to approve the parents set forth therein as school volunteers. S12 is a motion to authorize the attendance at the events set forth in that item. And S13 is a motion to approve the students set forth therein for classroom observation. May I have a motion for those items, please?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Pavulovic?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. S14, under policy and regulations, I'll ask for, before I ask Mr. Featherman to review them, I'll ask for a motion to approve on first reading the following, or the policy updates and revisions as set forth in that item. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Featherman, would you mind reviewing the policies before we approve them on first reading?
Absolutely, Mr. Sakala, thank you. The Policy and Regulation Guides 3221, Evaluation of Teachers. There have been several revisions and additions in the definitions section of this regulation guide. The revised administrative code includes a new definition for a designated supervisor, for observation and evaluation procedures, and for, quote, teacher. The definition of model evaluation rubric and teacher practice instrument were also added to the regulation guide's definitions. Definitions not used in this guide has been removed. Additional revisions in the regulation guide provide clarification to the original administrative code and mostly concern student achievement components, student growth percentiles, and student growth objectives. The revisions to this policy guide revise the definition of, quote, teacher and the code citations at the bottom of the policy guide. This policy and regulation must be approved by the board. Policy and Regulation Guides 3222, entitled Evaluation of Teaching Staff Members, excluding teachers and administrators. There have been several revisions and additions in the definition section of this regulation guide. The revised administrative code includes a new definition for designated supervisor for observation and evaluation procedures, and the definition of a model evaluation rubric was added to the regulation guide's definitions. Definitions not used in these guides have been removed. Policy and Regulation Guides 3223, entitled Evaluation of Administrators, excluding principals, vice principals, and assistant principals. There have been several revisions and additions in the definitions section of this regulation guide. The revised administrative code includes a new definition for a designated supervisor for observation and evaluation procedures, and the addition of a model evaluation rubric was added to the regulation guide's definitions. Policy and Regulation Guides 3224, entitled Evaluation of Principals, Vice Principals, and Assistant Principals. There have been several revisions and additions in the definitions section of this regulation guide. The revised administrative code includes a new definition for, again, a designated supervisor for observation and evaluation procedures, and again, the definition of a model evaluation rubric was added to the regulation guide's definitions. Definitions not used in these guides have been removed. A supervisor definition was also added to the definitions section of this regulation guide. 3431.1, 4431.1, entitled Family Leave. This is a revision. The federal, also known as FMLA, and state, also known as NJFLA, Family Leave Acts are very complex laws. Implementing these laws is problematic because the laws are slightly different and employees are entitled to the best benefits of each law. The provisions of the NJFLA have not changed. However, the FMLA has been revised for an eligible employee to care for a covered service member or veteran. Therefore, the FMLA section of the policy guide, covering teaching staff members and covering support staff members, have been revised to incorporate definitions and eligibility requirements relative to service members and veterans have been added to these guides. (5337), entitled Service Animals. This is a new policy guide. Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA, as amended by the ADA Amendments Act of 2008, requires public school districts to permit the use of service animals by individuals with disabilities who require such support. This new policy guide has been developed to specifically address this issue, including defining which animals may be considered, quote, service animals, and the specific work or tasks a service animal can perform, as well as under what conditions. Specific information regarding the conditions under which a service animal may be permitted in a school district is included, as is the delegation of responsibility for animal care and supervision. Policy 5516, use of electronic communication and recording devices. This is also a revision. Policy Guide 5516 has been revised to remove references to outdated code. An option has been added to prohibit remotely activated paging devices on school grounds. New Jersey statutes annotated 2C:33-19 continues to permit an emergency responder student to possess a paging device with certain conditions, which is reflected in this guide. Important language in this policy guide is the option that permits students to possess and use an ECRD on school grounds with certain guidelines. This option prohibits the use of an ECRD during the school day or when a student is participating in a school-sponsored activity, and it prohibits an audio or video recording by a student while participating in a curricular or school-sponsored co-curricular activity without permission of the persons being recorded. A district may revise this option to reflect the district's preference, and we have done that. Thank you.
Did I miss it, or did you skip over 1240? I think you started right at 3221.
Oh, did I? Well, shame on me. I think you're right. Most important one, evaluation of the superintendent. How did I miss that? My goodness, I apologize. Policy and Regulation Guides 1240, entitled Evaluation of Superintendent. The revisions in this policy guide include a few minor changes, not substantive, and the code section has been recodified from New Jersey Administrative Code 6A:10-7 to 6A:10-8. The only revision in the regulation guide is the revised code citation in section C.1.b. The policy and regulation must be approved by the board. Essentially, there was very little substantive change. There were no substantive changes to that particular policy.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions or comments regarding the policies and regulations that Mr. Featherman just described? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Pavulovic?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. May I have a motion for item S15 under curriculum, which is a motion to adopt the revised and realigned curricula for the 2015-2016 school year as set forth in that item?
So,
Motion, please.
so moved?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Pavulovic?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. May I have a motion under contracts for S16, which is a motion to approve the contracts for the 2015-2016 school year for special education students as recommended by the Director of Special Services as set forth in that item?
So moved.
Second?
Is there any discussion? May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
Mr. Pavulovic?
Yes.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting to the public for comment for items that are either on or off the agenda. Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the meeting. Our future meetings announcement, January 19th, 2016, will be our next meeting here in the North End Media Center, 7 p.m. for executive session, 8 p.m. for the regular meeting. And February 9th will be the meeting following that, February 9th, 2016, North End Media Center, 7 p.m. for executive session, 8 p.m. for regular meeting. May I have a motion to, we're adjourning to executive session, correct?
Yes.
May I have a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the items as set forth in E1?
So moved?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Have roll call, please?
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
Mr. Pavlovic?
Yes.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. The meeting is adjourned. Good night. Thank you for coming.